Welcome, everybody, to another rendition of the Lone Wolf Show on www.witchcrafttv.online. This is the WitchCon special presenter series of those magical witches across the world that are presenting on the biggest online conglomeracy of witches in the world. We have a special guest that is presenting at WitchCon backstage. But before we introduce, we have this short intro clip, so keep it right here, Witchcraft TV. Jamie, so nice to have you on Witchcraft TV. You're going to be presenting at WitchCon this year. Is that true?
Oh yeah, I'm excited. Looking forward to it. It's been a couple of years now that I've been able to do this. It's awesome to have such a strong pagan community. Amazing.
So, is this your first time on WitchCon? You've been there a couple times.
I've been here a couple times. I want to say it's my third, but it might be my second. I'm not sure. I think it's my third.
What are you presenting this year? What's your class?
My class is on spellcrafting for well-being during dark times. That I
Okay.
have, I started my first foray into writing as a double Capricorn, of course, was jumping in full both feet. So I wrote the Wicca cookbook in 2000. And, right after that, the first spell book or the first book I wrote was the teen spell book, which was really just my answer to coming out of my Saturn's return and still carrying a bunch of garbage with me and deciding that wasn't how I wanted to go into my 30s or the rest of my life. And so I wrote a spell book that took everything that was painful that I was still carrying around and hadn't let go of, and wrote a spell, a visualization, a meditation, something to transform the way that I was looking at things so that I could be in power of my life versus feel like I was at that time of my life. I kept having dreams like I was on Mr. Toad's Wild Ride and I was in the back seat. I wasn't at the driver's wheel of my own life, and I utilized witchcraft to put me back in that driver's seat.
So, who published you? Who published you for the books? Do you have multiple publishers?
Yes, I have multiple publishers. So I have my first publisher was 10 Speed Press, and they have most of my books. So they're the Wicca Cookbook, the Teen Spell Book, the Book of Spells, the Wicca Herbal, the Fairy's Guide to Green Magic in the Garden, the Enchanted Diary. So they have most of those books, and most of those came out between 2000 and 2009. And then the Book of Spells was the one that was revised in 2019. And then Sounds True published my most recent book, A Box of Magic. So yeah, there's been a couple, but I'm a traditionalist, so I've always gone with the traditional publishers. And a way to come in early was through cooking, because basically, I don't know if you've had this experience, but I would go to different sabbats and people would bring Kentucky Fried Chicken. I'm like, hey, we're an earth-based religion here. What are we doing? We got to bring seasonal food. We got to bring food from the earth. And, of course, being my adamant self, I'm like, I'm just going to write a cookbook about it. And yeah, so it was able to come through with a cookbook that was, I mean, a publisher that was specializing in cookbooks. So it worked out. It was a good foyer for them to enter into the world of Wicca and magic. And I liked coming through with a mainstream publisher because there's so many people that, back in 2000, I'd be at Barnes and Noble or Borders and those different bookstores and talking about witchcraft, and it's going over the intercom, and I'm like, oh my god, this is fun. Yeah, dear goddess, help me get through this one alive. And so it's so interesting to see how much the sphere has exploded for us, and how it's not as I mean, I don't think it is as terrifying, but I'm also older, so I don't care as much. to be out there in the world. I mean, we meet here in my mountain home, and I'm howling at the moon on Wednesday nights, and across the street they're reading the Bible. And it's like, yeah, that's how we roll. We're not hiding anymore. So I love it.
Would it have been okay if they brought a live chicken to the Sabbath and you did it from scratch?
Yes. Then we would have 3 days making the mole and doing all the tortillas and all the things. No, just kidding. No, I don't mean to cast aspersions that way or be so judgy. I just really wanted to bring the traditions back to it being about Mother Earth, and for me, being it's a way of healing and moving in the world where you feel like you're co-creating with the divine rather than the subject of some order that is trying to take you out.
Very cool, very interesting. So tell me about your your publications. What kind of process do you personally use when you write a book? Do you write it because it's a personal endeavor, or do you write it because you feel like it's something necessary for the community?
I write for two different reasons, myself and the reader. So, writing is how I process, writing is how I put my thoughts together, but it's also because now I have 10 published books. I feel that it's because there's a few other in the Hispanic culture, three others that I've written. So seven for magic and seven for my family. And I feel like it's just my gift. I love swirling and writing with words. I absolutely love going over a page over and over again until it's absolutely perfect. Like just like someone who works with gemstones would want to get that stone perfectly round or perfectly shiny or whatever aspect of it is that you're looking for. That's to me what it's like to play with words. And then when I get that process, like the teen spell book, which is now the book of spells, that one was the hardest, most painful to write. I went through my old teen diaries. I went through then it was 19 years later that it was being revised, and so or 18 years later, so it felt like it was a full child had grown up, and I had this opportunity to apply the lessons I had learned in the last 18 years. So for me, it's what needs to be said, what is aching within me to come out, and then finding a way to do it that I'm meeting people where they are and hopefully helping them. And in the same way, because I was the oldest child, so I kind of like my books to be somewhat of a an older sibling that you didn't have, or a really cool aunt, or someone who really believes in you and has your back and knows that you're gonna walk through the woods barefoot and hug trees and talk to the fairies that they don't see, and let that be okay, and really encourage that, and really encourage your ability to change anything with your mental magic.
When you bring the craft and magic to the mainstream, what do you think is the most important thing in today that needs to be addressed to the mainstream about our tradition, about our, I'll say, crafts or pagan ways? What
Right.
needs to be
Well, I
said?
think, when I would first introduce it, it was farm to table. That's kind of how I would talk about that importance, because that's what was trending 25 years ago, was farm to table. Today, I think what's trending is wellness, which is why that's the topic I chose. I believe that people are very much aware of the fact. I mean, the American Psychological Association just came out with a study about how connections are a key and integral part to wellness. And for me, within magic, that's what we do. It's one big connection. We're connecting to the cycles of the moon. We're connecting to the planets. We're connecting to the cycles within our body. We're connecting to the cycles within our life, our ages. And so I believe, knowing that it's about connection and empowerment, that those are the two things that it's about, because a lot of people will get very confused. Well, what about the spells? They'll come up with that one. It's like, well, every time you speak your word, that's a spell. You're casting your word, which is the same thing as a spell. So wouldn't you rather have your intention behind it? Wouldn't you rather have maybe perhaps a practice where you can learn to focus your intention And then also, everyone's doing collages these days, right? Every year every new year they're doing a collage, they're choosing a word for the year. And I'll say that's the same. An altar is a 3D collage. It's all the things that you want to create and manifest in the same way that you did those magazine clippings. I like to find what what the mainstream folk are doing and tie it into magic. To let them know they've already made steps towards it. They're already in some ways living it. If you're trying to live an intentional life, if you're taking responsibility for your wellness, if you are taking responsibility when bad things happen, you're like, wait, I'm the common denominator. How can I make a shift? All of that work is what is already happening within the magical realm. It's just you're doing it with a lot more intention, and also coming from a place of love with yourself and knowing that you are the divine that is creating with the world, with the universe, with your highest good, and those that are going to be impacted by the work that you do. So I feel like that's kind of one of the most important things. You point to things in their world that make sense to them. A study by the American, Psychological Association about how important relationships are with wellness. Okay, what relationships can we look to? What can we improve our relationship to our own body, to our circadian rhythm, to the idea in winter we rest, in spring we birth, in summer we bloom, and in fall we let go. Like finding those natural rhythms. And people are also so frenetic right now that coming back to nature is a balm for their souls. It's a balm for how frayed and frenetic they're feeling by knowing too much of what's going on in the world, and also having their inner world reflect that chaos that's happening in humanity right now. So I feel like being grounded in the cycles and the seasons and the um, healing that nature brings, telling them things that where they can connect. Because I can throw you can we can throw the big words at them all day. We can come at them with the pentacle, the pentagram, the devil, all the different things, and you just scare them, which is fine if you don't want to, because I've done that before too. When then you just get so annoyed. One time I was selling the teen spell book at a Renaissance fair, because the Renaissance fairs, the Celtic Renaissance fairs, you'd have a lot of pagans, even back in the day. And this one woman came up and she looked at the book and she says, "Does that mean my daughter is going to cast spells on me?" And I looked at her and I was just so done. And I said, "Do you deserve it?" I was like, "I don't know. What are you doing to help your relationship? If she lights a candle for your demise, it's like it's up to you to choose to take on that energy and play the game with her." So, or you can choose to empower her and know that every time she says something, her yes is powerful, her no is just as powerful, to empower her. And so I kind of swing the pendulum. It really depends on where I'm at. But if I'm really trying to connect with somebody, I try to find an entry point that is safe for them, so that they can begin to hear something that might be confusing or contradict what they believe to be true up until that point.
It says in your bio that you are an author and you have a column called "The Herbal Journey" for Witches and Pagan magazine. Is Witches and Pagans magazine still around? I interviewed.
You know what?
What
I haven't written that column in a while. I need to update that. But yeah, I did write the column for several years. And I was just thinking recently, I'm like, I haven't heard
magazine?
from Anne in a while. Like, how
Right.
is she doing? So I actually needed to check in with her. Um,
I'm,
because that was
I
one of
inter-
my first entry points into magic, was with herbs and making that connection with each individual herb as its own conscious entity, as its own sentient being, and developing a relationship with each herb, whether I'm growing it or using it as a tincture or putting it into a spell. Really having a relationship first, I feel, is so important. um to have a relationship with the simples, as Susan Weed would say. You first meet rosemary, and then you're going to meet rose geranium, and then maybe you'll take a look at lavender, and really get to know and sit with them, and not just what they do for you, because I don't like it when people say they use herbs. It's like, would you say, I'm not going to say I used Harold. Like, I'm not using you, I'm working with you. In the same way with plants, I think we need to say that. We'll say you used drugs, but did you use the lavender? Did you use the chamomile? It's not I don't think it's as respectful as we need to be with the herbs. But I really enjoyed writing that article because it was one plant at a time and really getting to know each one. And they would always have something amazing happen whenever I needed to work with one. Some reason would happen. Something would happen, and I would need to use the aloe or the plantain or the yarrow or whichever plant I was talking about. Something would happen. The plant would give me a reason and a story so that I can share, because I believe that deep down we're all humans who love our stories. So if you can tell a story about your connection with the correspondences that you work with or the herbs that you incorporate into your practice, the colors, whatever it is that you love, your pantheons, whichever, really knowing that relationship and deepening that relationship and having it be authentic and true and not convenient for you in the moment. I think that we need to have a reciprocal relationship with all of our magical elements that we work with, and rather than just kind of a taking.
So, who's your biggest inspiration when it comes to books books on the craft or herbology in conjunction with magic? Like we have the Paul Barrow, we have Scott Cunningham. Who's your inspiration?
Both of those two, both of them for their historic use. But my entry point was Starhawk, just in terms of entering into and learning first about Wicca and the divine feminine and this connection. And then Juliet, um I always going to say her name wrong and someone's going to be like, it's Juliet Deleve Barclay. I think that one of the first herbalists who really brought herbs back in a way of all the different aspects that they could do and really started recording that. And of course, Rosemary Gladstar. Those two, because I believe that whatever a plant does for you on a physical level, it can do for you on a spiritual level. So for example, rosemary is going to help you remember, right? It's going to tickle that part of your brain that's going to help you remember. It's going to bring in that scent. And so then that way you can use that idea of taking scent and connecting it to a feeling, to a time, to a state of being, and then you'll be able to do that in the same way that, like, um what I want to say, like oregano is, really strong cold care, so it's going to be a great herb for protection. So I feel like it's really interesting and opening of the relationship with herbs if you use them on your physical body, to also realize that you can use it for the similar qualities in your magic.
And who's your patron deities? Who do you want?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
What god and goddess do you walk with?
Oh gosh, I've got quite a few. In my shamanic priest tradition with Yesha Matthews with the Mount Shasta Goddess Temple, we part of our practice is to have a goddess in the four cardinal points and the four cross court and the four cross, so eight above and below. So for example, I have Bridget. I live in the mountains, and so I need to build a fire every day for a good 8 months out of the year. And so every day I say a prayer to Bridget before I light the fire. And so she's in the south. And then in my southwest is Kuan Yin. So there's an altar to her right there in the southwest. And when I'm full of piss and vinegar for somebody or something, I drop to my knees, grab my mala beads, and chant 108 recitations of Om Mani Padme Hum. We've got Yamoja in the west. I've got Hecate in the northwest, and Ushun in the north, and Artemis in the northeast, and Tara in the east, and Aphrodite above, and Baba Yaga below. So I surround myself with my ladies, and it's like, and I'm sorry, Kali. She's like right here going hello. So, and I have Kali, who also, which is really good because I have a mother of boys in their 20 or young men in their 20s, and it's that slicing and cutting and imploring them when you need to let your young men be men, and you no longer need to mother them, and you need to cut them off. So I drop to my knees in front of Kali's huge painting that I have and ask for her guidance with that. So they're strategically placed in directions that mean something to me. And so yeah, I'm very fortunate too. Like even my Aphrodite came from 25 years ago when I was hosting a cooking show for the Sci-Fi Channel. We shot a pilot right before 9/11, so of course it didn't go anywhere. But I had this big alabaster statue of Aphrodite, and so she's in the shower at the very top. So that way, when I'm bathing, I see myself in her reflection. So for me, I'm very practical that way. I want all my altars and all my reminders of that potential connection and that power, that it's never far, and they're not trying to hide from us, and they're not trying to make it difficult, that these deities are here and want to work in conjunction with me. So I have them all over.
Very, very nice. One final question for you. If you were to talk to, and many of our viewers are seekers and people just starting the path, whatever path that may be, what would be your advice to the new witch, the one that's just starting out? What would be your advice to them?
I would advise them to keep their own book of shadows. I would advise them to record what works and what doesn't work, how they are feeling through the seasons, to really pay attention, because our bodies is our first altars. How we treat ourselves, how we step into the world, how we allow others to treat us. I would recommend that, you know, buying things in person from individual buyers from small shops. I mean, you can buy a collection of things on Amazon, but you're not going to hold that stone. You know, you're not going to be able to literally choose it or have it choose you, as Rumi says. You know, that what we seek is also seeking us. So if you want a new wand, go look for that wand. If you want an athame, go into, either a knife shop or a thrift shop and find all your magical tools, and then record how they make you feel, but most importantly, record what it feels like to live through the cycles of the season. Back in the day, we used to say you have to be a witch for a year and a day before you can call yourself a witch. I mean, we used to say a lot of these old school kind of things, right? And so now people jump in with both feet already, which is fine, but you're going to be a different witch at 14 on Halloween than you will be at 24 or 54. So, in each turning of the great wheel, or the mandala of nature, as I like to call it, or I should say, my mentor called it this, and so now I call it the mandala of nature. That each point of the eight sabbats is a prayer point. It's a point to recognize what is it. We'll have Imbolc in February. So, what is it about that first light? What is it about the quickening? How is that reflected in your life? Like, continually reflect on the macro and the micro, and record it, and let's see where you are after a year.
Thank you so much, Jamie Della, everybody, presenter for WitchCon 2026, also a published author in our magical community. You can also check her out at jamiedella.com. Thank you so much for coming on the Lone Wolf Show on Witchcraft TV. Make sure you get those tickets to join her class on WitchCon. Spaces are filling up fast. Make sure to keep it right here on www.witchcrafttv.online. Blessed be, and merry part, merry meet again.